Residents were woken early this morning.
Good morning, everybody. As you know, earlier this week, a journalist raised concerns and concerning allegations about a staff member temporarily employed in my office. I have to say my sympathy is with the women who raised these allegations and were made to feel unsafe due to the actions of this person. I was incredibly concerned to hear of these allegations relating to conduct before this person joined my office. Because of the seriousness of the allegations, my team moved extremely quickly. That evening, it was agreed the staff member would be stood down and he then resigned the following morning. However, had he not done so, his employment would have been terminated following a short investigation. I do want to acknowledge and thank the staff in the Beehive and the Parliament who have worked alongside this individual and understandably have found the news upsetting and distressing, and I'm committed to ensuring that they have all of the support that they need. I have zero tolerance for any behaviour that makes women or anyone feel unsafe, and this individual's conduct fell unacceptably short of the standards that I expect from our people. And that's why you've seen us move within 24 hours of these allegations being put to us. This person is no longer employed in the Beehive. With that, happy to take your questions. Sorry, Benedict. Welcome back, Jamie. Oh, look, it was an absolute shock. We had no awareness, no knowledge of it. The concerns were raised with us by a journalist at 4 o'clock on Tuesday, as you're aware, yeah, complete shock to all of us.
Are you frustrated?
Sorry, I'll come back. Sorry? No. No.
Are you frustrated police never informed Ministerial Services, Louise Upston's office or your office about their investigation into his behaviour?
Well, look, we've got to make sure we respect the independence of the police. That's really important. But I think your question's a fair one, which is that DIA will continue. It doesn't end with the resignation of this individual. DIA need to look at the processes, particularly the interagency processes, to see what we can learn from this and improve our processes again.
Do you believe there should be an obligation of police to inform Ministerial Services if a staffer in the Beehive comes to their attention and is privy to an investigation?
Well, as I said, there's a difficult situation where you need to make sure that police are independent, but equally there is work that will now go underway, which Ministerial Services will lead on a deep dive to understand what other actions need to be taken to improve our processes. Sorry, Joe.
What can you say about the vetting process in terms of whether he was vetted, whether moving into Louise Upston's office, and whether subsequent vetting was done moving into your office?
Yeah, so as I understand it, he was vetted coming into Louise Upston's office back into the Beehive. The incidents happened subsequent to that vetting, and then obviously he moved into my office in February this year. Those are good questions around making sure that we got all the vetting processes correctly. Obviously there's a need for people working in my office to have security clearances, all of that good stuff. But in this case we're asking DIA to do a deep dive on what else has happened.
So are you getting information on whether he was dishonest at all, if there was any vetting or any questions ahead of him going into your office?
Well,
Well,
look, I mean, the key thing was he was vetted coming into Louise Upston's office. As I understand it, the incidents happened subsequent to that. He has an obligation to actually declare those issues or those incidences to us. That didn't happen, which is why there would have been his employment terminated, obviously. But there is a good question about making sure, and I've asked specifically for DIA to look at our vetting processes, particularly the interagency pieces of it, and they will do a bit of a deep dive on that and look at that.
staff in the building were aware over the past year about that police investigation. I know you say you weren't, but do you now know that any other staff?
Not that I'm aware of. This has come as a total shock to us and to the people that have worked with him and to our team. So from what I'm aware, there has been no other issues raised or concerns or awareness of this issue at all. I'm not able to talk about the security clearances. Obviously, it's an employment thing and it's very strongly linked to Ministerial Services and what we do around the process around security clearances. But suffice to say, he had the vetting that he needed to come into the Beehive, and as you know, there's a standard that is needed to be working in obviously my office, but also in the Beehive in general. So we will look at that to make sure that if there's anything else that we could have done differently in that vetting process. Well, again, DIA will look into all of those processes and Ministerial Services, but I just say, we had clearances when he came back into the Beehive, and I'm comfortable that information would have been managed appropriately. But I'm sorry. No, I'm not going to talk about security clearances that individuals may have and what level. Well, sure, but what I'm saying to you is I can't talk about the level of clearances that people have, and obviously there's different levels, but essentially DIA is going to look into that to make sure that we what other things that can we look at around vetting and security.
Are you concerned that one of the screenshots on his phone was of your phone number?
I was unaware of that, but look, it is the reality is many New Zealanders hearing this story and just find this utterly unacceptable, as do I, and incredibly distressing, incredibly concerning. So I think there is a real need for us to actually make sure that we are going back through all of our processes again to understand how this happened and what else we can do to strengthen them.
Do you feel let down by the processes?
I feel. First and foremost, I feel, my initial reaction on hearing on Tuesday night was just huge empathy and sympathy for the women that have been impacted here. The second group that I feel really, gutted for and about is my staff. I have an outstanding team of people that support me in the Prime Minister's office, and our staff here in the Beehive are phenomenal people. And we have worked really hard to build a really great team and a really great culture. And for our people who have worked alongside him, this is incredibly shocking and, as you can imagine, very distressing. And so, we've spent, that was my initial reaction, just absolute sadness and sympathy for the women that have been impacted by his actions. And then for my own staff who, this has been quite a shock and a distressing event for them. And I want to make sure that they've got all the support that they need as well. Sorry, Joe.
You have not been able to be, you haven't been able to say that you have a workplace that is safe. Do you have any concerns about whether there has been any safety issues with any of your staff because of the lack of information you were provided?
What I'd say is that we have made sure that we have adhered to and held the highest possible standard of our processes to date. But when you have an incident like this, that actually, irrespective of all the processes that we've built up over many years in this place under successive governments around how we manage staff and how we vet staff and clear staff, there clearly is a need for us now to go back through this example and actually look and say, what else can we do to improve? And those are legitimate questions. I don't have answers for you around those today, but obviously DIA have already kicked off a deep dive into seeing what further actions are needed to actually strengthen our processes yet again.
Because Richard Chambers has said that obviously he found out about it pretty much the same time as you did, and no surprises with the police minister, but do there need to be some processes gone through here with police about why it wasn't elevated under the previous commissioner and look at that as well?
Well, I think there's just a fair question to say, look, one of the areas is to look at, have we got siloed processes in place that actually aren't joined and working in a cross-agency sense well enough. And we have to take this incident and we have to understand what actually has happened here and how did it happen, and importantly, what more can we do about it? And I do think that's a legitimate question, Joe, which is to say, what can we look at between the interagency processes between the different agencies, whether it's police, whether it's SIS, whether it's Ministerial Services, others.
And it's not the brothel. RNZ has spoken.
Sorry, the
brothel.
Yeah.
The RNZ has had an interview with the madam there. She has raised concerns about the laws that we have in this country around privacy and recording. Do you have concerns about that? And are you going to make any changes or look at those laws
Yep.
in the context of all of this?
Yeah, I'd just say, look, I think many Kiwis will be incredibly concerned with this issue, as I am too. I'm open to looking at our settings again as we go through this experience we have a series of laws, whether it's the harmful digital bill, whether it's privacy laws, whether it's now new stalking laws, but obviously we're open to looking at that further as well.
What did you say to the women in the department and precincts who were here who were reached out to us and said that they're deeply uncomfortable with revelations? What did they do?
I spoke to a lot of them yesterday, that are immediately in the team and work closest with the individual. And I met with some of them last night and had good conversations about it. And they just understandably, there's anger, there's it's distressing, it's very distressing for those individuals. And so to be able to talk with them personally, I know my staff have done a very good job of getting wraparound support around them. That will continue, and it's frustration and anger because I know how hard our staff work. I know how hard they take this job. They hold the position 24/7, and there is no distinction between their personal and their work lives. They hold these positions. They represent this office incredibly well, and for them it's pretty gutting.
And they concerns that female staff members inside your office could have been at risk by working with this individual?
There is, I've been told there is, we don't believe that there's been evidence of this incident happening here in the work environment. But having said all of that, again, I want DIA to be reassured around that.
I noticed
Sorry? I don't know. Not that I'm aware of or have heard. Sorry, Adam.
Exactly what DIA is going to be looking into, how wide-ranging that is, and when they will report back.
Well, I think it's just really important that when you have an incident like this, that with all of our processes which have been, followed as they are to date, that actually this incident then actually creates a whole bunch of new questions. And so I have to say Ministerial Services, DIA, have been very quick, and they need to do a deep dive on understanding exactly how and what happened here and why, and importantly then look at what we need to do to strengthen our processes so that this is actually building on how we do things around this place. I need them to have some time to do that. I think one of the issues, as Joe has raised, is a legitimate question, is what is happening with the interagency engagements and information sharing around security clearances and all of that stuff. But I'm going to let them go through that process. They are very focused on it. They're very exercised on it immediately. The response has been very good. No, in fairness, this is pretty confronting news, and it's happened pretty quickly, as you can imagine. But I have to say they've already kicked into gear.
Just that the police commissioner this morning has said that it was up to the former police commissioner as to whether we were told under no surprises. You've got the former police commissioner in a role with the Social Investment Agency. Are you comfortable with that? Are you going to be?
I'm not going to jump to any conclusions at this point. It's really important that we actually genuinely learn from this experience and build it into our improved processes. And in fairness, I need to let DIA actually do that deep dive and actually come and think that process through. I don't want to be jumping. There's a whole bunch of. Let's be clear. It's an utterly unacceptable position. It causes huge distress for the women that have been impacted, for our own staff. There it raises genuine questions about how could this happen, and actually making sure that we do upgrade our processes. But I need to let DIA deal with that and actually work their way through that. I don't think. Sorry.
Do you have an expectation though that there is background checks done in your office now, because that's pretty easy to do, and it's as a basic thing that they could have done?
That's what I'm saying to you. Those things have been done, and that is our process, and it has been processes under, I imagine, previous governments as well as ours, and we have adhered to those processes and done everything that we have done. But even with that, this individual has still come through. The reality is this individual was vetted. The incidents, as I understand it, happened after they were vetted, and then subsequently they didn't raise those issues as concerns, which we would expect them to do because it impacts the office and the reputation of the office, and for obvious reasons. But that didn't happen, and that's why I would say to you, after a very short investigation, the individual would have been fired anyway. But the point is that we actually do need the DIA to run through that process. Sorry, Thomas. I don't know. It's really important, again, as you could well imagine, that we do respect the independence of the police. There'll be a range of considerations about what they've decided around prosecutions or not based off the law. And as I said, there is a legitimate question around interagency communication.
Do you know if the investigations will result from this? Do you risk that any security breaches may flow from it? Like, are there going to be separate investigations into whether information could have been disclosed that shouldn't?
DIA will look into all of that as part of the deep dive into the actions. Yeah. Sorry, Mark.
Should there be a new round of background checks though for staff in your office and elsewhere in the beehive, given that we've seen this issue, we've had a background check and then a police investigation?
I think that's a legitimate question, Mark, and I think that's what I'm alluding to. Is I think, we can say we've followed the process where someone was vetted, an incident happened, it wasn't self-reported, obviously in this case, and there's a series of things that we need to be able to look at, and so that is one of the things I think we can ask.
You said you're open to potential changes to the law around privacy or communications or something like that. Will you or have you tasked, assuming we hold Ultimate Justice Minister, into looking into that? What does open mean versus what can actually?
Well, I mean, as you can understand, this is a matter of 24 hours post the event, and there's a series of actions that are going to need to be consulted around. And we're going to, I just think if you're a New Zealander listening to this story, you ask quite legitimate questions about how does this behaviour happen, and is it legal or illegal, and I have that same reaction to it as well. And all I'm just saying to you is I'm open to revisiting that. In fairness, I think we should let DIA and Ministerial Services work through all the elements of this case and what it brings forward and what questions it throws up.
Minister, do you have any
Sorry, Brodie.
Do you have any sense as to whether there will be any further allegations about this individual?
Not that I'm aware of. My team and Ministerial Services spoke to the individual immediately. We were informed at 4 o'clock they were brought in, stood down immediately, and as I understand it, that's not something that I'm aware of.
In their explanations, has there been any comment about sort of culture of Parliament or the stress they're under, any other factors raised that contribute?
No, I think you've seen the statement from the individual themselves, where they've talked about their own personal challenges. But I think look, as we've said before, Parliament's a robust environment, but I wouldn't. This is we've worked hard to improve the culture of Parliament collectively across this place. I know certainly within my own party, we've taken that very seriously over the last 4 years. We have, we believe in building a better culture. I think we've done an exceptionally good job of that. That's why for us and our team personally, it's pretty gutting for our team we've done that. But I wouldn't link it to, for example, previous cultural challenges that this place has had. Sorry, Benedict.
Is there an obligation in people's contracts who work for you or for ministers that if they do come under police investigation, that they let you know, that they let Parliament?
As I understand it, yes, and in this case that didn't happen.
What's the fine that he was making?
Sorry?
Was it a government issued fine?
As I understand it, it was more of a private phone, but again, those are questions for DIA, and I want reassurance around that. I don't know, but again, I'm not going to go into that. I'll let Ministerial Services work their way through that.
Last couple.
Sorry, mate.
You said you're offering support to your people in your team. Are you offering that more widely given the nature of the behaviour?
Yeah, across the whole of the Beehive staff that we've got, obviously our immediate focus has been on the teams that have worked with in Louise Upston's office, certainly in my office, but generally across the whole of the Beehive. And I have to commend certainly my Chief of Staff and also Ministerial Services for the work that they've done actually communicating with our staff last night about this issue. Obviously, we want to make sure that people have got full awareness of EAP. I think as leaders, it's been incumbent upon me to go, I've been talking to key staff. We'll have an opportunity tomorrow to bring all our staff together again and to talk about it further. Sorry? No, I didn't. No. It was genuinely at 4 o'clock on Tuesday when the journalists raised the issues with our office.
And how much time passed on that 4 p.m. media request and at the time you dismissed or stood down?
I think the request came into our office at 4 o'clock. The individual was called into the office pretty much immediately that night. There was a conversation with the Chief of Staff and the Ministerial Services, and that person was immediately stood down. They resigned the next morning. As I said, under our employment process, we would have had a short investigation and they would have been fired.
Has your office been in touch with any of the victims?
I'm not sure at this stage, but certainly our focus has been moving very quickly through the process. We have huge empathy for the women that have been impacted, clearly, and obviously we also care for our staff. And importantly, I think it raises, as you've raised today, a number of questions that we want DIA to continue to explore.
Just on that, MPs and staff from other parties as well who use the building, use the gym, for example, will also be concerned about this. So that care that you're extending to your staff, what specifically are you going to do for other parties and other staff?
We'll look at that, but I mean, clearly, this is not really a political issue. This is actually a process issue that we have to understand how this happened, because it could have happened to anybody, frankly. I just want to be clear, I'm not aware of any issues in the parliamentary gym, just so we're clear about that. But obviously we have very strong EAP services across the precinct, and we encourage people to use them. Obviously there are people that worked closer with this individual that certainly will be impacted, but this will trigger issues for people across the whole of the precinct as well. Sorry?
Were you surprised to learn that much of the alleged behaviour is not an offence under the current law?
Well, as I said to you, I think any Kiwi watching the story, and me as well, I think it raises and throws up some pretty good questions about, this is a constantly evolving area. It's a difficult area of law, as you know, because technology is evolving in the way that it is. There will be bits that will be captured by current laws, there may be bits that aren't. We're open to looking at that in due course. Okay, last question. Sorry? Well, I'm not going to go into that. I'm just saying to you this is unacceptable behaviour. There is no doubt about it. If you are one of those women who have been treated in this way by this individual, I think that is incredibly distressing, and I have huge sympathy for them. I think if you're a woman working in my office or in this beehive or on this precinct, that is incredibly concerning. And so that's where my head goes to on this issue, and I'm determined, and DIA, I have to say, have been excellent, outstanding, to make sure that, yes, we may have followed all the processes as they stand today, they were adhered to as best as I can understand. But the question is, when you have an incident like this, it then makes you go back and question, okay, we hadn't planned on this event, we clearly had all the processes in place that were built up over a number of years in this place. What else now do we need to improve and step up again? And that's what the work will be about. Okay, team, better go. Thanks so much. Appreciate your time.